Marcus Chen had fought in 17 different star systems, survived 3 major fleet battles, and earned more combat decorations than most soldiers saw in their entire careers. But standing in the gleaming throne room of the Zephyrian royal palace, watching Princess Veltar's 4 eyes narrow with contempt, he wondered if this diplomatic mission would be his most challenging yet. The princess stood nearly 8 feet tall, her crystalline blue skin catching the light from the massive windows that overlooked the capital city. Her elaborate robes, woven with threads that seemed to capture starlight itself, swept the polished floor as she moved closer to where Marcus stood at attention. "So this is what the humans send us," she said, her voice carrying the melodic but cold tone typical of her species. "One warrior, one single, unremarkable human to represent your entire species in our grand tournament." Marcus kept his expression neutral, though he could feel the weight of dozens of alien dignitaries watching from the gallery above. Representatives from 12 different species had gathered for this event, and he was painfully aware that he was the only human present. "Your Highness," Ambassador Kelridge said, stepping forward from where the human delegation stood. "Commander Chen has an exemplary service record. He's defeated Krillian death squads, survived the siege of Proxima Station, and—" Silence. The princess raised one slender hand, and the ambassador's words died in his throat. "I did not ask for his history. I can see what he is with my own eyes." She began to circle Marcus slowly, her gaze examining him like he was livestock at auction. Small. Weak-looking. No natural armor, no claws, no enhanced musculature. "Tell me, human, what makes you think you can compete against warriors bred for combat, against species that have evolved for war?" Marcus maintained his military bearing, staring straight ahead. "I don't think, Your Highness, I know." A ripple of surprised murmurs went through the assembled crowd. Few beings spoke to Princess Veltar with such directness, especially not representatives of smaller, less powerful species. The princess's expression shifted to something between amusement and irritation. "You know? How refreshingly arrogant. And what exactly gives you such confidence?" "Experience, Your Highness. Training. And the fact that I volunteered for this mission when others wouldn't." She laughed, a sound like silver bells with an undertone of mockery. "Experience fighting what? Other humans. Your species has barely left your home system. You've been spacefaring for what, 200 years? My people have been warriors for millennia." Marcus finally turned his head to look at her directly. "Then you should understand that experience isn't just about time. It's about what you do with it." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Princess Veltar's expression hardened, and Marcus could sense the tension radiating from the human delegation behind him. "You dare lecture me about warfare?" she hissed, moving closer until she towered over him. "You pathetic little creature. Your entire species is nothing but a curiosity, a footnote in galactic history. You have no real technology, no significant military, no culture worth preserving. The only reason you're here is because the Galactic Council needed to fill a quota, and your kind happened to be the most expendable option." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest, but his voice remained steady. "I see. Do you? Do you really?" She gestured toward the viewing gallery where the other delegates sat. "Look around you. The Krillians, bred for battle since birth. The Thoraxians, with their natural armor and acid blood. The Centauri, whose reflexes are faster than your primitive mind can even comprehend. And then there's you, a soft, weak human who thinks his little metal toys make him a warrior." She reached out and tapped his chest armor with one sharp fingernail, the sound echoing in the vast chamber. "This protection you wear, this artificial skin, it's an admission of your weakness. Real warriors don't need to hide behind manufactured defenses." "Your Highness?" Ambassador Kelridge tried again, his voice strained. Perhaps we could discuss the terms of the tournament? I am discussing them, the princess snapped. I'm explaining to your representative why his participation is unnecessary, why it would be a kindness to exclude him from what will surely be his death. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. The contempt there was genuine, he realized. This wasn't political posturing or diplomatic maneuvering. She truly believed every word she was saying. Your Highness, he said quietly, may I ask what you hope to gain from this tournament? The question seemed to catch her off guard. What I hope to gain? Victory, obviously. Honor. The right to claim superiority among the assembled species. And what does that give you? Her eyes narrowed further. Power. Respect. The acknowledgement that the Zephyrian Empire stands above all others in matters of combat. Marcus nodded slowly. I understand. And you believe that defeating weak opponents would demonstrate this superiority? I believe that defeating all opponents demonstrates superiority, she replied, her voice sharp. But there's no honor in crushing something that was never a threat to begin with. Then you're afraid. The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. Every being in the room seemed to freeze, and Marcus could practically feel Ambassador Kelridge's blood pressure spiking behind him. Princess Veltar's 4 eyes went wide, then narrowed to dangerous slits. What did you say? You're afraid, Marcus repeated calmly. Afraid that if you fight me and I happen to win, it would mean that all your assumptions about strength and superiority are wrong. Afraid that maybe being big and having claws doesn't automatically make you a better warrior. So instead of taking that risk, you'd rather dismiss me as unworthy. It's safer that way. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. When the princess finally spoke, her voice was deadly quiet. You ignorant, presumptuous little insect. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I have killed more beings than your species has produced warriors. I have torn apart Krillian battle titans with my bare hands. I have stood alone against Zentauri assault teams and emerged victorious. And you think I'm afraid of you? Marcus met her gaze without flinching. I think you're afraid of what I represent. The possibility that you might be wrong. She drew herself up to her full height, her skin beginning to glow with the bioluminescent patterns that indicated extreme emotion in her species. You want to know what you represent? You represent an annoyance, a pest that needs to be crushed to remind the galaxy of proper order. Your Highness, Marcus said, his voice taking on a formal tone. I came here to represent my species with honor, to compete in your tournament according to the rules and customs you've established. If you've decided that honor doesn't apply to this situation, then perhaps it's best if I withdraw. Oh, you'll compete, she snarled. You'll compete and you'll lose, and your death will serve as an object lesson to any other inferior species that thinks they can stand among their betters. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He smiled. Your Highness, he said, beginning to work at the clasps of his chest armor, I think you've made your position clear. What are you doing? Ambassador Kelridge hissed from behind him. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he calmly removed his chest plate and set it on the floor with a metallic clang that echoed through the chamber. Then he began working on his arm guards. Human, what is the meaning of this? The princess demanded. Marcus removed his arm guards and set them down beside the chest plate. You said real warriors don't hide behind manufactured defenses. You're absolutely right. He continued stripping off his armor, piece by piece, setting each component down with deliberate care. Leg guards, shoulder plates, helmet. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as Marcus reduced his protection to just his basic uniform. There, he said when he was finished, standing before the towering princess in nothing but his simple military clothing. No artificial skin, no manufactured defenses, just me. Princess Veltar stared at him, clearly not having expected this response. "You think removing your armor makes you brave? It makes you suicidal." Marcus shook his head. "It makes me honest. You want to see what a human warrior really is? Fine. But I won't do it while you're standing there telling me I'm not worthy of basic respect." He turned to Ambassador Kelridge, who looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "Ambassador, please inform the princess that the human delegation withdraws from the tournament." "Commander, you can't." "I can, and I am." Marcus turned back to the princess, who was staring at him with an expression of complete bewilderment. "Your Highness, you've made it clear that you view my species as inferior and unworthy. I won't participate in a competition where the organizer has already decided the outcome based on prejudice rather than ability." He began walking toward the exit, leaving his armor scattered on the floor behind him. "If you change your mind and decide you're interested in a fair competition based on skill rather than assumptions, you know where to find us." "You cannot simply leave," the princess called after him. Marcus paused at the threshold and looked back over his shoulder. "Watch me." And with that, he walked out of the throne room, leaving behind a chamber full of shocked delegates and one very confused alien princess who was beginning to realize that humans might not be quite what she expected. The sound of his footsteps echoed Tao. The news of the human delegation's withdrawal from the tournament spread through the palace like wildfire. Within hours, it had reached every corner of the capital city, and by the next morning, it was being discussed across multiple star systems through the quantum communication networks. Princess Veltar sat in her private chambers, staring out at the city below while her chief advisor, General Thaxun, stood rigidly at attention behind her. The morning light caught the metallic threads in her robes, but today their brilliance seemed dimmed. "The other delegations are talking," Thaxun reported, his voice carefully neutral. "Some are questioning whether the tournament can proceed as planned with one of the invited species absent." The princess didn't turn around. "Let them talk. The tournament will proceed. We have 11 species represented. That's more than sufficient." "Your Highness, the Zentauri ambassador has requested a private meeting. He seemed concerned about the precedent this sets for future diplomatic relations." Now she did turn, her 4 eyes flashing with irritation. "Precedent? What precedent? An inferior species overreacted to honest assessment and removed themselves from competition they were never qualified for in the first place." Thaxun chose his words carefully. "Some of the delegates are suggesting that perhaps the humans' reaction indicated we may have misjudged the situation." "Misjudged?" Veltar rose from her chair, her voice rising with it. "That creature stripped off his armor like some kind of dramatic child and stormed out because he couldn't handle the truth about his species' limitations. How is that our misjudgment?" Before Thaxun could answer, there was a soft chime from the chamber's communication panel. "Your Highness," came the voice of her secretary, "Counselor Zethrak of the Krillian delegation wishes to speak with you urgently." The princess exchanged glances with her general. The Krillians were their oldest allies, fierce warriors whose opinion carried significant weight in galactic military circles. "Send him in." The massive doors slid open to admit Counselor Zethrak, whose reptilian features were set in an expression of barely controlled agitation. His scaled hide bore the ritual scars of countless battles, and his reputation as a warrior was legendary even among his own kind. "Your Highness," he said without preamble, "we need to discuss yesterday's events." "I wasn't aware there was anything to discuss," Veltar replied coolly. Zethrak's vertical pupils fixed on her with uncomfortable intensity. "Then you're not aware of what happened after your human left the palace?" The princess felt a flutter of unease, but kept her expression neutral. "Enlighten me." He was attacked. Zethrak's words hit the room like a physical blow. 3 members of the Thoraxian Junior delegation cornered him in the market district, They decided to test the famous human warrior for themselves. Veltar's stomach dropped, but she forced herself to remain calm. And he killed all three of them. The silence that followed was deafening. Thaxun's breathing became audible, and even the soft hum of the chamber's environmental systems seemed to grow louder. "That's impossible," Veltar said finally. "Thoraxians are natural predators. Their armor is impenetrable, their strength far superior to—" "He had no weapons," Zethrak continued relentlessly. "No armor. Nothing but his bare hands and whatever he could improvise from his surroundings. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes." The princess felt the room spinning slightly. "You're telling me that an unarmored human killed 3 Thoraxian warriors in hand-to-hand combat? I'm telling you that we may have made a significant error in judgment." Zethrak moved closer, his voice dropping to a rumble. "My people have fought humans before, Veltar. Small skirmishes, border disputes. We thought we knew what they were capable of. But this—" He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "The Thoraxians were found in a pattern that suggested coordinated team tactics, but reversed. Instead of the human being overwhelmed by superior numbers, he used their numbers against them, made them interfere with each other's attacks while he systematically disabled them." "Disabled?" Thaxun spoke for the first time since Zethrak had arrived. "The first died from a broken neck. Clean, precise, no wasted motion. The second had his respiratory system crushed by what appears to have been a piece of market stall debris used as a lever. The third—" Zethrak's expression grew troubled. "The third was the largest of them, nearly twice the human's size. He died from internal hemorrhaging, after the human somehow got inside his guard and delivered a series of precise strikes to pressure points we didn't even know Thoraxians had." Princess Veltar sank back into her chair, her skin beginning to show the pale patterns that indicated shock in her species. "How do we know this human was responsible? Perhaps someone else." "There were witnesses," Zethrak cut her off. "Dozens of them. They all tell the same story. The Thoraxians approached the human aggressively, clearly intending violence. The human tried to avoid conflict, even attempted to walk away. When they cornered him and made their intentions clear, he asked them once if they were certain about their course of action. And then? Then he became something else entirely." Zethrak's voice carried a note of respect that chilled the princess more than anything else he'd said. The witnesses describe his movements as impossibly fast and efficient. No wasted energy, no unnecessary brutality. He neutralized 3 trained warriors like a surgeon removing tumors. Thaxun cleared his throat nervously. "Where is the human now?" "That's the other problem," Zethrak replied. "He's gone. The entire human delegation left the planet this morning. Their ship departed without fanfare, without protest, without any attempt to contact palace authorities about the incident." Princess Veltar felt a chill run through her. "They left? Just like that. Just like that. Which means they either don't care about potential diplomatic consequences or they're confident that the incident will be viewed as justified self-defense." Zethrak's eyes never left her face. "Given what my people have learned about human military doctrine in the past few hours, I suspect it's the latter." "What do you mean, what your people have learned?" "After news of yesterday's events reached our home world, our military intelligence division began a more thorough analysis of human conflicts. We'd dismissed their species as primitive because their technology seemed simple compared to ours. But we made a critical error." He moved to the chamber's display screen and activated it with a gesture. "We assumed that simple meant ineffective. But humans don't use simple tools because they lack sophistication. They use simple tools because simple tools work." The screen showed tactical analyses, battle reports, and strategic assessments. As Zethrak spoke, images flashed across the display showing human military operations, weapon systems, and combat footage. Their weapons are reliable, easily maintained, and devastatingly effective at their intended purpose. Their tactics prioritize adaptability over rigid doctrine. And their soldiers. He paused, pulling up a series of psychological profiles. Their soldiers are trained to think independently, to adapt to changing situations, and to continue fighting effectively even when cut off from command structure and support. Princess Veltar stared at the screen in growing horror. You're suggesting that we've underestimated them. I'm suggesting that we've completely misunderstood them, Zethrak corrected. We looked at their lack of natural weapons and assumed weakness. But a species that survives and thrives without natural advantages must develop other strengths: intelligence, adaptability, creativity, and most importantly, the absolute refusal to give up. He changed the display to show a series of historical human conflicts. Look at their history, Veltar. They've been fighting each other for millennia, constantly improving their methods, constantly adapting to new challenges. When they finally reached the stars, they didn't stop fighting. They just found new opponents. But surely their small size, their lack of armor, makes them faster, more agile, harder to track and target? Zethrak's voice carried the weight of professional military assessment. And as for armor, they don't rely on natural protection because they've learned to avoid damage entirely. Why absorb an attack when you can prevent it from landing? The princess felt her world shifting beneath her. The tournament is now meaningless, Zethrak said bluntly. Word of yesterday's events and this morning's incident has spread to every delegation. Half the participants are questioning whether they want to compete in a tournament where the most dangerous competitor was insulted and driven away before the fighting even began. Thaxun stepped forward hesitantly. Your Highness, perhaps we could contact the human delegation. Extend an apology. They won't come back, Zethrak interrupted. And frankly, after what I've learned about their species, I'm not certain we want them to. The human that your princess insulted yesterday isn't just some minor warrior, Veltar. His service record makes for fascinating reading. The screen changed again, showing Marcus Chen's military history. Combat deployments, decorations, commendations from allied species, tactical innovations that had been adopted by other military forces. He volunteered for this mission, Zethrak continued, not because he was expendable, but because he was the best they had available, and we treated him like garbage. Princess Veltar felt something cold and heavy settling in her stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying that we've just made enemies of a species we don't understand, led by warriors we're not prepared to face, and worst of all, we did it publicly, in front of representatives from every major power in this sector of the galaxy. Zethrak's expression was grim. The humans won't forget this insult, Veltar, and from what I've learned about their species, they don't forgive easily either. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the environmental systems. Outside, the capital city continued its daily routine, unaware that their princess had possibly just made the greatest diplomatic mistake in Zephyrian history. What do you recommend? She asked quietly. Zethrak's smile was sharp and predatory. I recommend we prepare for the possibility that we'll find out exactly how dangerous humans can be when someone threatens their pride. In the corridor, until they faded entirely, leaving only silence and the glitter of 3 weeks after the human delegation's departure. Princess Veltar stood in her war room, surrounded by displays showing fleet movements and diplomatic communications. What had started as preparations for a ceremonial tournament had evolved into something far more serious. The first ship had appeared at the edge of Zephyrian space 5 days ago, a human vessel, smaller than any of their own warships, maintaining position just outside their territorial boundary. It had responded to all communication attempts with a simple message: diplomatic mission, requesting audience with Princess Veltar. But this ship hadn't come alone. 18 vessels now, Your Highness, Admiral Kextar reported, his voice tight with concern. All human, all maintaining perfect formation at the boundary marker. Still no aggressive movements? She asked, though she already knew the answer. The humans had done nothing threatening, nothing that could be construed as an act of war. They simply waited like patient predators. None whatsoever. They respond to our communications courteously, repeat their request for diplomatic audience, and otherwise remain completely silent. The Admiral paused. Your Highness, our intelligence suggests that several of those ships are military vessels that were supposedly deployed in other sectors. They've gathered a fleet specifically for this mission. Princess Veltar felt the familiar chill that had become her constant companion since Counselor Zethrak's revelations. Any word from the other delegations? General Thaxon stepped forward, his expression grim. The Centauri have officially requested that we resolve this situation diplomatically. The Krillians have offered to mediate, though Counselor Zethrak made it clear they won't support us if hostilities break out. Most concerning, the Thoraxian Empire has formally protested our handling of the incident that led to the death of their 3 nationals. Protested how? They're supporting the human position. They've stated publicly that the humans acted in legitimate self-defense and that our failure to provide adequate security for visiting dignitaries represents a serious breach of diplomatic protocol. The princess closed her 4 eyes, feeling a headache building behind them. The Thoraxians are supporting the humans, the same humans who killed 3 of their people? According to their statement, they view those deaths as the result of their own nationals' inexcusable behavior. They've actually commended the human warrior for showing restraint by not pursuing legal action for the unprovoked attack. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. The chamber's main display activated to show the weathered face of Captain Sarah Morrison, commanding officer of the human fleet. Your Highness, Captain Morrison said, her voice polite but carrying an undertone of steel. I'm requesting permission to bring a small diplomatic party to the surface. We have matters to discuss. Princess Veltar exchanged glances with her advisors. They'd been expecting this moment, dreading it. Captain Morrison, what assurances can you give regarding the peaceful nature of your visit? Morrison's smile was sharp. The same assurances you gave our previous delegation, Your Highness. We'll be respectful guests, following all protocols and customs, unless given reason to behave otherwise. The implicit threat in those words hung in the air like a blade. Very well. You may bring 5 representatives. Standard diplomatic immunities will apply. Understood. We'll arrive in 2 hours. The connection closed, leaving the chamber in heavy silence. 2 hours later, Princess Veltar stood in the same throne room where everything had started. But the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. Where before there had been pageantry and diplomatic ceremony, now there was tension so thick it seemed to press against her skin. Captain Morrison entered first, followed by Ambassador Kelridge and 3 others, but it was the 5th member of their party that made the princess's breath catch in her throat. Marcus Chen wore no armor, carried no visible weapons, and looked exactly the same as he had 3 weeks ago. But something fundamental had changed. There was a quality to his presence now, an aura of controlled danger that made every being in the room instinctively aware of him. Your Highness, Captain Morrison said formally, I believe you've met Commander Chen. Marcus stepped forward and executed a perfect military bow. Princess Veltar, thank you for agreeing to see us. His voice was courteous, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its calmness. The princess found herself studying his face, looking for anger or hostility, but finding only the focused attention of a predator evaluating potential prey. "Commander," she managed, we didn't expect to see you again." "I imagine not." He moved closer, and she had to resist the urge to step back. But recent events have created some complications that require discussion. Captain Morrison activated a small holographic display device. "Your Highness, in the 3 weeks since Commander Chen's return to human space, we've conducted a comprehensive review of this incident and its implications. What we've discovered is deeply concerning." The hologram showed tactical analyses, diplomatic communications, and intelligence reports. "We've learned that this tournament was not simply a ceremonial competition, as originally presented. Our intelligence indicates it was intended as a demonstration of Zephyrian military superiority, designed to intimidate potential rivals and reinforce existing power structures." Princess Veltar felt her stomach drop. That assessment was uncomfortably accurate. Though she'd never expected humans to be capable of such sophisticated intelligence analysis. "Furthermore," Morrison continued, "we've discovered that several participants in this tournament were specifically chosen because they were considered manageable threats, species that could be defeated without significant risk, providing impressive victories without actual danger." "That's not," the princess began, but Morrison cut her off with a raised hand. "We also know that you expected our representative to provide exactly what you described. An easy victory that would demonstrate the futility of smaller species attempting to compete with established powers." Marcus spoke for the first time since his greeting. "The question, Your Highness, is whether you still believe that assessment was accurate." She looked at him. This supposedly inferior human who had killed 3 Thoraxian warriors with his bare hands, who had somehow coordinated the assembly of a fleet that had every military advisor in the palace nervous, who stood before her now with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how dangerous he was. "I may have been mistaken about certain aspects of your capabilities." "Mistaken." Marcus repeated the word thoughtfully. "That's one way to describe it." Ambassador Kelridge stepped forward, his diplomatic instincts finally kicking in. "Your Highness, we're here to discuss resolution, not to assign blame. The human government is prepared to put this incident behind us, but we need certain assurances for future diplomatic relations." "What kind of assurances?" General Thaxon asked. Captain Morrison consulted her datapad. "First, formal acknowledgement that the treatment of Commander Chen violated accepted diplomatic protocols. Second, public apology for the failure to provide adequate security that led to the attack on our delegation. Third, revised diplomatic agreements that ensure equal treatment for all species regardless of their physical characteristics or technological base." Princess Veltar considered the terms. They were reasonable, far more reasonable than she'd feared. Almost suspiciously reasonable. "These terms seem generous," she said carefully. Marcus smiled for the first time since entering the chamber, and somehow that expression was more unnerving than his previous seriousness. "Your Highness, we're not here for revenge or punishment. We're here because this incident revealed a fundamental misunderstanding that could cause problems in the future." He gestured toward the viewing gallery, where the other diplomatic delegations sat in tense silence. "Everyone in this room just learned something important about humans. You learned that we're more dangerous than you assumed. But more importantly, you learned that we prefer to resolve conflicts through negotiation rather than violence." The princess felt a chill of understanding. "You could have responded militarily." "We could have," Marcus confirmed. "That fleet outside your system? Those aren't exploration vessels, Your Highness. They're ships of the line, crewed by veterans who've fought in more campaigns than most of your people have seen. We could have arrived with demands backed by overwhelming force. But you didn't. We didn't. Because despite what you may think about humans, we actually prefer peace to war. We'd rather have strong allies than conquered enemies. We'd rather be respected than feared. Captain Morrison stepped forward again. However, Commander Chen's experience here has highlighted some concerning attitudes among certain galactic powers. The assumption that physical appearance determines combat capability. The belief that technological sophistication is the only measure of military effectiveness. The idea that smaller or newer species are automatically inferior to established ones. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of delegates from a dozen different species. These assumptions are dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. Dangerous for you, dangerous for us, and dangerous for galactic peace in general. Marcus took over the explanation. Your Highness, my species has a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. You looked at me and saw a small, weak creature without natural weapons or armor. What you missed was everything that made me dangerous. Which was? The princess asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. Intelligence, training, experience, and most importantly, the absolute refusal to accept defeat. His voice hardened slightly. You see, humans have something that many species don't. We've spent our entire evolutionary history fighting things bigger, stronger, and better armed than we are. We've gotten very good at it. The holographic display changed to show human military engagements throughout their brief spacefaring history. Every species we've encountered has initially underestimated us based on physical characteristics. Pirates who thought we'd be easy prey, slavers who thought we'd be compliant victims, military powers who thought we'd be convenient allies who'd follow orders without question. And, General Thaxon asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. They were all wrong, Marcus said simply. Dead wrong, in most cases. Captain Morrison shut off the holographic display. Your Highness, we're sharing this information not to threaten you, but to prevent future misunderstandings. The human government wants peaceful relations with the Zephyrian Empire. We want to be allies, trading partners, and friends. But that requires mutual respect. Respect, Marcus added, based on accurate understanding rather than superficial assumptions. Princess Veltar looked around the room at her advisors, at the alien delegates, at the human representatives who'd just demonstrated more sophistication and restraint than she'd shown in her own throne room. The weight of her mistake, of how badly she'd misjudged the situation, settled on her like a physical burden. Commander Chen, she said finally, I owe you an apology. Not just for diplomatic protocol, but for personal disrespect based on ignorance and prejudice. I was wrong about you, wrong about your species, and wrong about what strength really means. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Apology accepted, Your Highness. We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. The fleet outside our system will depart as soon as our diplomatic mission is complete, Captain Morrison assured her, though I hope this won't be the last time human ships visit Zephyrian space. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Marcus paused at the threshold of the throne room and looked back. Your Highness, you mentioned earlier that real warriors don't hide behind manufactured defenses. She nodded, remembering her words with embarrassment. You were right about that, he said. Real warriors don't hide behind armor or weapons or assumptions about their own superiority. Real warriors face their opponents with honesty, courage, and respect. I hope your tournament teaches its participants that lesson. And with that, he walked out of the throne room for the second time, leaving behind a very different Princess Veltar than the one he'd encountered 3 weeks earlier. This time, she understood exactly what she was watching walk away. Abandoned armor on the polished floor.